Right. Okay, welcome back to Delboy's Garage. Now today we're going to cover something related to the last video, which was the brake service. This is going to be the rear brake service on your Harley Davidson Sportster. Now probably more riders of Harleys ride Sportsters than big twins. So this rear caliper is an extremely common item. It's on just about every single Sportster that's later than about 95, 93, 95. And it's an extremely easy piece of kit to work with. But it's a slightly unusual design. It's a floating caliper on slide mounts and it's a single piston. It's not something you commonly see on today's modern bikes. And on that basis I want to show you what it works, how it moves backwards and forwards, the basic mechanical principle of what it's about. And somebody asked us just recently, how do you get them off? Now we can only presume that he wanted to get it off because he thought he wanted to take the pads out and clean them up. But you don't need to. There's a really clever design on this particular caliper. They've got a simple pin that you withdraw and the caliper, the pads just extract out the back of the caliper with everything in situ. You don't touch a thing. So I want to show you basically how it's designed, how it works first, and show you why. A lot of people look at that assembly and they immediately think you take out X and Y bolts and it lifts off, and then they get in a right old trouble when they take them out and there's all sorts of things going wrong that they don't understand. It's a little bit of a weird design. So stick around, stay tuned. Let's show you how it works first and then I'll show you how to clean it up just like that with no grief at all. Okay, it's as simple as this. This is your rear brake assembly on a Harley Davidson Sportster. It looks pretty much like a conventional brake, but it's something that you can't really determine what it is. It's this bit here unless you know otherwise. Now this cast item, this cast steel item that goes all the way around there, around the back, around, and actually through a link at the back here where the axle goes through, is your bracket that this all bolts to. So this is what's I suppose commonly termed as a floating caliper. Unlike the Bandit here, which has a solidly mounted caliper and a floating disc, this is the other way around. It has a solid disc that's just one thick sheet of steel, but it has instead a floating caliper. What that simply means is when you apply the pressure through the hydraulic system, the caliper itself moves. It floats on two pins, one there and one through here. And these pins have just got, very, very simply, a sliding ram inside, and they slide in and out of two holes there. They've got a rubber boot over them to keep the dust and grit out, and they're greased inside. And they're greased pretty much like a bearing. You don't have to service those, you leave them in situ. A lot of people go taking this bolt out straight away, or they undo it, pull it halfway and it doesn't come, and then they pull that one, they pull this rubber off thinking that there's another bolt under there, they split that, and it's very common. In fact, your Harley parts guy will tell you they probably sell more of those rear boot caliper covers than anything else of that system, purely because people pull them off to see if they can get a bolt there and they split it because it doesn't come off. That's not designed to be touched unless you actually take the wheel out. So how do you get the actual caliper off itself? Well, it's ever so simple. The caliper is only slid on. It's only held on. There's no bolts holding that caliper on. It's slid onto these two pins. And the only way to get it off is that way. And obviously, if you imagine at the moment the disc is there and the caliper sits like that, you have to take the wheel out so the disc is out the way. Then that slit, it just slides off. The caliper just slides off the end of the pins. It's not something you have to do, so if you're only cleaning up and servicing, don't worry about it. It's not important. There's a simpler way to get the pads out. You don't have to touch any of it. And as you can see, this bracket here, it actually goes like that around the back of the swing arm. There's the top bit there, and there's the big bottom bit, and there's your swing arm, and it sits like that. There's no way you can get this off without taking the wheel out. And that presents its own little set of problems for those DIY mechanics who may not have a lift, because if you've got a full fendered Harley, you're not going to get that wheel out the back. You've got to get it down before it comes out. And to get it down that far, you've got to get it up a good 2 feet. So if you've got a lift, like our one, then you can do that. If you don't, then getting the wheel out can be a bit of a pain. You trolley jacks and all that sort of thing, it really is a mess. But that's probably why they make it so easy to service. So that's enough about that. Quite simply, you can't take the caliper off without taking the wheel out, then taking the bracket off inwards, and then sliding the two apart. You really don't need to do that. Let's show you get the pads out. It's simplicity itself. Okay, now this is pretty common. That there and that are the two brake pads, either side of the disc, and here is your time-honoured pin that you get holding all brake pads in. So that pin needs to be withdrawn, and obviously there is the point where it goes in. So looking at that, it looks like it's a screw, but it's not. That's just a cap. All you do, pop a screwdriver in, make sure it's a nice tight fit. Just give it a little tap in and you'll hear it crack. There we are. and it's nice and tightly seated. It's because it's on a flat seat. Now that's all you get. It's just a little pin, and you can see the state of that. It's already got salt on that from where old Penny rides in the wet. So we'll put that safely to one side, and inside there, and this is going to upset the purists, inside this hole, that is a 5mm Allen key, and I'm afraid it is indeed 5mm metric. Now today, these days, there is more and more, crack that off, there are more and more metric parts on your Harley these days, I'm afraid. As I said, the purists may not like it, but that's the way the manufacturer does it. So 5mm Allen bolt, Allen key. Withdraw the pin, it screws in this side, and in the back it just goes into an empty hole. There we go. And that's quite dusty and dry, which is pretty common. It gets to a point, there we are. Take the Allen key out. Already we've dropped a pad out the back. Now there's the pin withdrawn. Now before I do anything else, I'm just going to get a little pair of needle pliers. There's only one piston this side, so there's only that one to withdraw. I'm just going to hold the top corner of the pad, just give that a little twist back very gently, and that will give me some room to get it out. Back pad just lifts out like that, and that pad there again comes out there. That's it, you've withdrawn the pads from your Sportster. So if you're just doing a pad change, that's it, you've taken them out. Now as you can see for this bike's done, what's your mileage now?
5 something.
5 something this is done apparently. So these pads have done 5 something and 5,000 miles. Now like I said to you yesterday, if you get this little cut or groove in between, that groove there is for one reason. It's to tell you at a glance by looking down on top whether or not.
Well, I've just done my 5,000 service, haven't I?
Yeah, so that's
so
fine.
Just over 5,000.
There we are. If you look at that little groove, the groove goes down to a point and then it stops. There's about 1 millimetre of pad material that isn't grooved. So to check whether they're worn or not, how easy is that? Just see if there's a groove there, they're fine. Also, you're looking for symmetry. If they're as thick at that end as that end, and they're all symmetrically worn, that's fine. Now these pads are the factory pads. They usually, if you see a coppery look to that, they're a sintered metal pad, because it's a very hefty brake, and you can see that on the inside of this pad, and not on the outside one, on the inside pad there's this scoring, and all that's caused by is bits of grit getting underneath. So that's why it's important to clean your brakes. So we can clean those in a second. We're down to the same old thing as we were yesterday, which is soapy water and a toothbrush. So all I've got to do, if we look in here, that's the piston as we had on the other one. I don't need to worry too much about taking the caliper off because I can get to all that in there with an old toothbrush. So I'm going to get that first of all sprayed out. A little bit of brake cleaner. And that just drains out underneath. A little test is if it's coming off clean, then you haven't got too much in there. And that's fine, that's nice and clean coming out of there. So it's not too bad. Let's get the old soap and water and a toothbrush, give it a good old jollop. Right, same drill as yesterday. In there with the old toothbrush. And get yourself all around the gum line there. Clean off any of that build up, crud build up, that prevents the piston from moving back. And on this particular caliper there is just the one. Single piston floating caliper. And to get underneath, you can indeed get up. No, you can't.
No.
So you get at the back of it. There you go. See? Sensodyne toothbrush gets down the back of it. It can reach the back teeth. Hard to reach areas. Right, and just for a second, get the brake cleaner again. Clean all that off. And you can see in there straight away that's nice and shiny. But what I want to ensure now, just for a second, is that piston is moving nicely by hand. Now if you'll feel it straight away. Get your fingers on the inside of it and just squeeze the caliper and you'll feel it move back. So then reach over to your brake pedal and pump it out. Careful not to trap your fingers. Okay, I'll push it back. Can you get the camera on that pen? I'll show you. Right, pushed it back, right back. There we are. Right, that's right back. And now you can see it comes out nicely. Now also what you're looking for that's very important is if you watch it, as I pump it, it goes in and it goes out again. So a little movement is going back under its own pressure, which is proving that it's not seized. It was a little bit bindy, wasn't it?
Yep. Squeezed a little bit.
Now, just again, I'll say it one more time, this, as I did yesterday, as you can see with the steam, this is extremely hot water, almost too hot for your hands. It won't do any harm, except to the dirt and crud, and that's exactly what you want it to do. Brakes are designed to get hot, so they are resistant to heat, it's not a problem. And the heat in the water will take away, it will melt the dirt right underneath. Right, okay, that's that done. And a final clean, just use lots and lots of this. Clean all that out. And the idea is to rinse off all the water, get all the crap out of that. Now, back wheel on a Harley will have quite a bit of resistance anyway because it's belt driven, and that belt drive is quite stiff, so don't worry, it doesn't spin. I mean, that's how it spins without any brakes in, so that's the best you'll ever get. Right, going to dry all this off now and we'll prep the pads for going back in. Same drill as before. Soapy wetter, does the job. As it works on your roasting tin, Granny. So it'll work on this. And those there. And we've got these little shims on the back, and I'll show you what we do with those in a minute. Okay, they smell nice. Yummy.
Strawberry fairy liquid.
I was thinking more the ether from that brake cleaner. Right, that's it, nice and clean. Now we're going to prep these to go back in with some copper slip. Okay. Now these pads obviously slide side by side across this pin, so it's important the pin's clean and free of corrosion. And if yours is really badly corroded, they cost about £7 from your Harley Davidson dealer, so just buy yourself another one. Get them when you get your pads. Now there's another question. What do you put in these as pads? If you're replacing your pads, what do you do? Do you cut corners? Do you get some budget ones from eBay, or do you go to the dealer? Well, what you do is this. This is what we always do, okay? Find out what the dealer uses, what they recommend. Get the make, the brand, whatever it is. And get a price from them. And say, thanks mate, I'll think about it. Then go on the net and you'll find them, I guarantee, 50% cheaper. But those are the pads to get, because those are the pads that Harley recommend. You will find cheaper ones, they'll be out there. But why take a chance? It is brakes. And honestly, 15 to 20 pounds for a set of brake pads is not too much. Now I'm going to just show you this. This is the little shim on the back. You may not have seen these. It's just a little metal clip that clips to the back of the pad, and its purpose in life is to absorb any vibration and stop them squeaking, because obviously when something's rubbing against something else, if you remember when you were a kid with your finger on top of your grandma's vase around the top, you make that woo noise. Well, that's where brake squealing comes from. It's high frequency vibration. As it stops and starts, you get click 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 click, and eventually it's a singing noise, like a squeal. So these go on the back, they're like a squeal pad, and a great way to deal with them, that's that one, that's the right pad, is to clean them up. They just lift off, they're not screwed on or glued on, they just kind of grab over with all these little corners. So just gently push one end off and they'll ping off like that into Penny's lap. There we go. Right, that's not too bad. Right, what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to use a little bit of emery on the back of those, and that doesn't hurt. Just because that corrosion comes from the fact that these are not necessarily, I think they're copper. You can see the orange, that's a copper plating on the back. But it still corrodes. Everything corrodes, even stainless. So just give them a clean up, get them as nice as you can. A couple of sheets of our emery paper. And this is, like I said in the last video, it's just housekeeping. Okay. So that's the thread of your little cap. Just give that a clean out with a spark plug brush, get all the salt out of the grooves. And then we're ready to go. So that's all the equipment we've removed. We return to good old copper grease. And all we pop is a little bit on the back of each pad. And as we said, this shim, if you want to call it, its purpose in life is to prevent these pads from juddering backwards and forwards at a super high frequency and squealing. What we do is we put that under there, and obviously then when you fit that on like that, it's sandwiched, and there's a kind of a squishy sandwich of copper grease inside there, and that is going to prevent any issues of it vibrating. It's going to absorb that vibration and prevent it so the brakes won't squeal. That's that one done. If you don't have the shims, you just put this on the back of the pads like we did in this Suzuki. You only need a smear. It's no more than you would put butter on a biscuit. It's not a big old squash of it, because you don't want it oozing out everywhere. It doesn't melt, it's got a super high melting point, so it won't run out onto your pads. But if you put too much, then it will ooze out and you simply an excess amount. So give it a quick wipe round, make sure none of it's come out, and then we're good to go. Right, now these have got a little hooky hook at the front, so when they go in, that just hooks in the front and sits in place, and then the pin goes through. There's nothing to slot in, and they're really easy to do. So we're going to pop them back into their little slot. They're not sided, it doesn't matter which one goes in first. You just feel down inside there and you'll feel a little hook at the bottom, and that's it. And then same with that one. Push that piston back a bit. Second one goes in, and you can feel them. They go into a little mount at the bottom. It's extremely obvious that they've located properly. Just hold them in like that. Now we've got the pin. Now all we do, pin goes in dry. You don't need to put copper grease on the shaft of this pin, because it really doesn't make any difference. It won't do anything, it will just wash off in all the weather, and it is a stainless pin, so it'll be fine, and you can keep an eye on it when it's there anyway. But where you do put a little tiny dab is there on the thread, just as we did in the last video, and then we just wind that in. Just let that roll around as it goes in. Takes the copper grease with it, and that will prevent it from seizing in situ, so you can't get it out in the future. Okay, all the way in. Now again, I come back to this point about torque settings. If you're doing this on your bike and you don't have any particular experience of doing it, I would suggest to torque these up to the correct torque setting, but personally you get a feel for it in the end. That's tight enough. Finally is this little doobry, which covers up the top of that and stops it corroding. So it's just a little cap, but obviously that cap is just a screw. That isn't an Allen key, so don't mistake it for one. That's simply a screw, and that doesn't mean it means you don't have a great deal of purchase on it when it comes to undoing it. So make sure that this is properly greased. It comes to putting it back in, and then it won't seize in place. I've had to centre punch a few of these out in the past. That's it. And if you just screw it in and out a few times, you'll spread that grease all around it. And when that goes in, feel where it seats there and just give it a little nip. That's it. Don't overdo it. And there we are. So like all these things, once that lot's all done up and back together, it's now spinning because the pads are backed off. So you know what happens, come to your first bend, we said this before, you've got to hit the brakes and nothing's there, so make sure you pump them out. All that takes is 2 or 3 hits on the pedal around this side, There we are, we're back to normal. That's it, there we are. Now remember, spinning this, even with the pads out, it doesn't spin freely like a front wheel, but that is cool. If you give that a 180-degree spin with your hand, you should do about half a turn on its own. And with the belt resistance, that's fine. So there we are. It is as simple as that. That's a simple service of your rear brakes on your Sportster. It doesn't take 15 minutes to do. Anybody can do it. Just take care, take time, and be meticulous. And if you get stuck, drop us a line and we'll see if we can help you out. Okay, take it easy, ride safe. Thanks for watching. See you next time.